can walk into that situation, even if you know you're
Yeah.
about to bring him back out, and not cry at that
Right.
moment.
And I think that shows kind of what Eric said. It shows his humanity.
Yeah.
Yeah, that he was human, and that he when he got into a situation like that, and he saw the people around him that were hurting, he couldn't help but weep with them. Hmm.
I understand the assessment of it, but did you know that he waited 2 days so that he would die? Did it say that?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
He waited 2 more days.
But yeah, but
Oh
did
yeah.
it say that he did that so that it would be long enough for him to die?
No.
Yeah, because we always say he did that so that he could come and raise him from the dead, but I understand that assessment, but I'm not sure
Right.
that's exactly what
No, we kind of have to piece some things together in order to
It
get
does
there.
say this sickness is not meant for death, but is for the glory of God, so that the Son of Man is
Right.
glorified. And it said he stayed 2 more days.
Yeah, I'm not doubting that. I didn't know if I just thought maybe it was sad that he died, I think.
Yeah.
He didn't go there just knowing he was already going to be dead.
I think that's what I was putting together. I think it must have hurt Jesus to see people go through the normal pain
Yeah.
and generation process that is in this world.
Hmm.
He could not experience it himself. But it must be just hard for him to offer while facing
Yeah.
offer. While he's watching people struggle with all this. And so I think that it kind of puts us together. He didn't stay away on purpose that he wanted Lazarus to die. He was just letting things take its course. And
Take a natural course.
to watch this. Some of my closest people
Yeah.
are going through this. And thinking, it must have been hard for him to be the offer of everything to let these things happen. And to watch the consequences of it. And you have to be there and say,
Yeah.
I'm going to do this to show
Hmm.
I was going to be okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's hard, not human, finite, fully comprehend God. God's
Of
heart,
course.
God is spirit. And nobody's ever seen God. It's hard for us to comprehend. But Jesus walked on this earth 2 days, bled, died, he wept. It helps me to see Jesus' humanity. It helps me to know that he was a real person.
It really does. It is oddly comforting knowing that he was human, just like us, that he went through those trials. Yeah. Yeah. I think, yeah, so the question was, did he wait those 2 days so that he would die? I tend to think he was, based on that statement. It's not explicitly said, but again, I think if we piece those things together, that's what we find, yeah. Hmm. Yes.
And he knows, as we see in the scriptures, which is really kind of like a wake-up call for me, because on more than one occasion, the word few is mentioned. On the Sermon on the Mount,
Hmm.
only a few will find it.
Yeah.
The church of Sardis, you got 7 churches home around there, only 2 were faithful.
Right.
Five churches of Christ were not.
Right.
And he talks to the church of Sardis, and he says, only a few have not soiled your garments. And your names will not be written out of the book of life.
Yeah.
And I think that I could just see that he's talking about weeping the thought, and what Missy brought up too, kind of ties back into this, and I've been through that too, crying my eyes out, as soon as I was given the shot,
Yeah.
and so I'm thinking, here is the Son of God going to die for us, and yet only a few are going to do what he says.
Yeah.
Teach them to obey all my commandments, to know all these things. And so he must know that, here Lazarus is dying.
Hmm.
And the whole thought of dying, we're all going to die. The question is, am I going to be ready to meet Jesus?
Right.
Who will judge me for the scriptures? And for him to say, look what else you do, and with all of us. Why didn't you really follow me?
Yeah.
I remember reading something that the Jews had a
So it took me a little while to find that because I had always heard that too. And several commentaries didn't mention anything about that, but I went back to a fairly reliable source who a lot of people cite, and he did a lot of citations, and he actually did his own citations on that. It did evolve over the years, so what we might read about some early Jewish traditions may not be exactly what was in the first century, but in the first century at least, they did believe that on day 4, after being dead, the soul finally leaves, not the body, but the area. And later Jewish traditions, it's very different, and they have other things that they do because of that. It kind of goes to this idea that that's when corruption finally takes over the whole body. My opinion on that is that they probably believe that not from any biblical source, but from watching a dead body after a couple of days, after day 4. That's when the appearance really starts to go south, and that's probably where that kind of belief probably comes from. But yeah, so day 4 is the day that they believe that the spirit did leave. Yes. Yeah. Well, and think about it too. Even in Jesus' own burial, right, on the 3rd day, why were the women going to the tomb? To with the spices and everything, right? Because after day 3, they were going to seal that tomb up, and that was it, right? Or after at the beginning of day 4, that's probably when they were going to seal it up.
I'm glad that now we can demonstrate his power.
Yeah.
I'm glad that he died at this point.
Right. Yeah.
Strange thing to say. Now we can demonstrate his power.
Mm-hmm. And I honestly, I love what he says to Martha before it happens. Didn't I tell you that if you believed, you would see the glory of God, right? Like, essentially he's telling her, you're not going to believe what you're about to see. Like,
They had seen him healing people.
oh, yeah.
Him showing up, and he brought back Jairus' daughter too, but this is different in the
Yes.
sense that this guy's in the grave, sealed up, and everything.
Yes.
So
Any other time he brought somebody back to life, it was within a short period of window,
it
yes.
was like a near miss situation.
Near miss. Nicked him.
Almost
Just,
alive.
yeah. What is it? Mostly dead?
Yeah.
Your friend is mostly dead. Yeah. Not in this case. Lazarus was dead. Yeah. So, and I can't help but think about this too, right? Just as that Jesus calls Lazarus out of the tomb, that's what he's going to do for us on that last day. He's going to call us out for the resurrection as well, which I think is just it's a very comforting and powerful thought that one day that we will hear something similar to that, right? And we will be born or raised again. So, any other thoughts or comments on that chunk of text there? Okay. So let's go ahead and read verses 45 through the end of the chapter. Many of the Jews, therefore, who had come with Mary and had seen what he did, believed in him. But some of them went to the Pharisees and told them that what Jesus had done. So the chief priests and the Pharisees gathered the council and said, "What are we to do? For this man performs signs. If we let him go on like this, everyone will believe him. The Romans will come and take away our place and our nation." But one of them, Caiaphas, who was the high priest that year, said to them, "You know nothing at all, nor do you understand that it is better for you that one man should die for the people, not that the whole nation should perish." He did not say this of his own accord, but being the high priest that year, he had prophesied that Jesus would die for the nation, and not for the nation only, but also to gather into one the children of God who were scattered abroad. So from that day on, they made plans to put him to death. Jesus therefore no longer walked openly among the Jews, but went from there to the region near the wilderness to a town called Ephraim, where he stayed with the disciples. Now the Passover of the Jews was at hand, and many went up from the country to Jerusalem before the Passover to purify themselves. They were looking for Jesus and saying to one another as they stood in the temple, "What do you think? That he will not come to the feast at all?" Now the chief priests and the Pharisees had given orders that if anyone knew where he was, he should let them know so that they might arrest him. Excuse me. So this is a little closure of the story, but also a setup to Jesus' final week, which of course starts kind of in the middle of chapter 12. So it's interesting that you do have some of these people who are at the funeral who went and tell the Pharisees what had happened, right? I can't even comprehend. You would hear Jesus teaching, you would see this miracle, and what's your first thought? Oh, I got to go tell the authorities. Really? I hope you're going to tell them good news, not, hey, you're never going to guess what Jesus did again, right? I'm hoping they went to them and be like, you're never going to believe what just happened. This is amazing, right? I don't know what their intent was, but they went and told the Pharisees. And of course, they freak out a little bit. And a debate is fairly simple, right? There's two sides to this. We can either let him live or we can have him executed, right? Those are really the two options that they see, the only two options that they see, which is sad, but it's the only two options that they see. And the problem with letting him live, of course, is then more people are going to believe, and then Rome's going to come in and take our power away. And that's what they're worried about. Which, again, there's more options than this, right? Let's consider other options, guys. And then, of course, the other one is to have him executed, which is another problem. Why? The people are going to be upset at them, right? It doesn't say that in this passage, but we see that elsewhere when they do debate these things about whether we should murder Jesus, for lack of a better term. I do wonder, and this, of course, is just a wondering, if there were people in the council who, I know there were believers in the council who tried to stand up for what was right. I wonder if there was at least other people who were saying, maybe we shouldn't put him to death because it's wrong to murder a person who's innocent. I don't know if that was the case. I just was thinking about that. I know there were people who believed and who tried to challenge that, at least to say, we need to give him due process, right? We see that Nicodemus in chapter 7, if I recall correctly, says that to the council, and of course he's shut down fairly quickly by saying, well, are you one of his believers? Clearly the clear heads do not prevail here. And we see this really kind of interesting thing about Caiaphas. We know that he is the high priest during that year. And if you recall, I know you're good Bible students, if you recall the high priest at this time, it was kind of a rotating thing. And so in this case, Caiaphas' father-in-law, his name just escaped me. Annas, thank you. Had been high priest at one point, and then he kind of passed that torch to Caiaphas, and it had kind of gone back and forth a little bit, but Caiaphas was the high priest during this year. And he has this prophecy. He prophesied that Jesus would die for the nation, but not just for the nation, but also to gather into one the children of God who were scattered abroad. That is an interesting prophecy that he has. And the thing that he kind of takes away from that is, well, it's better for one man to die than for the whole nation to be destroyed, right? Because they were really afraid that the Romans were going to come in and say, you know what, we're kind of sick of you guys, just all of these little rebellions you have, you can't keep quiet, you can't do what we ask, and we're just going to take care of you, right? They were kind of afraid of that, of the Romans just kind of coming in and wiping them out. Not just their power, but also the nation themselves. And so he says, you know what, it's better if this one man die, we can keep the peace, and we'll have our whole nation. And then he cites there's this prophecy that he had, which I don't know, it doesn't tell us if this was given to him by God, or if this is just something that he prophesied on his own. His prophecy seems to be exactly what God tells us, right? That Jesus would die, not just for the nation, but for the people of the world, right? In a sense, that's what his prophecy is about. And of course, what's their resolution to that? Yeah, well, I guess we got to kill him, right? Their reasoning is entirely wrong about that. They don't understand what the truth is here, that the reason they have to do that is for the forgiveness of sins. They see in a different way, I think. But just kind of a interesting little piece there that John kind of gives us about Caiaphas. So, any thoughts or questions here? Mm-hmm. Right. He does. Yeah, absolutely. Mm-hmm. So we find out that this is getting close to the end of, or the beginning of his last week, right? And we have this, in verse 55, we know the Passover is at hand, and the Jews are on the lookout for him, right? Even the week before, they're looking for Jesus in the temple, because they know people are going to come to the temple before Passover to cleanse themselves, and so they're looking for him. And they send out the word, if you see him, let us know, because we need to arrest him. And so that puts us now into chapter 12. So, well, I was hoping to get a little bit more into chapter 12, but we're kind of running a little late on time. So, let's go ahead and get through maybe this first part of chapter 12 then. So let's go ahead and read the first 8 verses. 6 days before the Passover, Jesus therefore came to Bethany, where Lazarus was, whom Jesus had raised from the dead. So they gave a dinner for him there. Martha served, and Lazarus was one of those reclining with him at the table. Mary therefore took a pound of expensive ointment made from pure nard, and anointed the feet of Jesus, and wiped his feet with her hair. The house was filled with the fragrance of the perfume, but Judas Iscariot, one of the disciples, he was about to betray him, said, "Why was this ointment not sold for 300 denarii and given to the poor?" He said this not because he cared about the poor, but because he was a thief, and having charged the money bag, he used it to help himself to what he put into it. Jesus said, "Leave her alone so that she may keep it for the day of my burial. For the poor you will have with you, but you will not always have me." And so we see that Jesus leaves Ephraim, kind of on the edge of the wilderness. He comes back into Bethany. So we are 6 days out from Passover. So this would have been the Sunday of his final week. And he's at a feast with Lazarus. Lazarus is also there, kind of maybe celebrating the fact that Jesus is back and Lazarus was resurrected from the dead, and these wonderful, amazing things. But then Mary, of course, gets this expensive oil and anoints his feet and wipes it with her hair, which would have been, I don't want to use the term scandalous, but it would have been very out of the ordinary for her to have taken her hair out of whatever was there, take it out of the covering, and then used that to dry his feet. Obviously, it is a sign of her humbling herself to him. But it would have been very awkward, I think, for a lot of people there because of the norms and traditions that they had, specifically with women's hair. But of course, that's not the problem that Judas had. What was the problem that Judas had? Yeah, we really could have done good with this money. And of course, Jesus knows his heart, right? And answers him, basically says, "Leave her alone, and she's going to do what she wants with that, and she can take care. She'll need that for my burial as well. The poor you will have with you always, but not always me." And he's going to say that kind of little phrase, "You will not always have me," all throughout chapter 12 before we get to the Last Supper. All right, well, thank you so much for your time and your participation tonight. We'll see you next week. Hey, John, thanks for the prayer. It really was.